rawness or vintage beauties have always had takers across all generations. Whether it was that first Rolls Royce that rolled into Indian soil in the early 1900s, or whether it was that vintage beauty your grandmother always told you about. We at Living Cars have always tried to give you a glimpse into this era that has gone by. But today we don't give you one, we don't give you two, but we give you this entire plethora of vintage beauties to feast your eyes upon. And your only job is to sit back and enjoy. The Indian vintage history dates back to the 1908 when the very first Rolls-Royce, the Pearl of the East, rolled on Indian soil. It was a part of a cross-peninsula car rally. With the royalty of India getting increasingly fascinated with vintage beauties, there was soon a number of Rolls-Royce across the country. This 112-year-old association with the automobile world has led in recent times to a growing vintage car interest. It has also led to some car enthusiasts to open museums to showcase the same. Today on Living Cars, we take you into India's first heritage transport museum. The museum is significant on many levels. Not only does this piece of architecture give its international counterparts competition, but it also boasts of a fantastic heritage. We caught up with Taoru, the brainchild behind this venture, and asked him about his love and collection of both four-wheelers and two. Okay, Taoru, let's start with, where did this actually start? The entire fascination and history. I read a very interesting trivia about, there was a particular Chevy that changed the game, right, and the rest, as they say, is history. Would you like to tell us about it?
I was out of the country for about 2-3 years. And when I came back, I started appreciating our own old things. So it all started with gramophone players, lamps, presses, those Purani irons. Suddenly I came across on a trip to Rajasthan a 1932 Chevy. That was in a it was in a dilapidated condition. But something triggered in me that I should procure it. So for 4,000 rupees, I purchased that car. So when I brought it to my place of work and thought that let me just redo this, start rebuilding this, everybody thought I've gone a little crazy. But once the car, after spending about 2 years on the car, once it was on the road, people started loving it. And the amount of appreciation I got at that time, I think that's somewhere which triggered that let me try and get into cars, or it triggered a passion at that time about automobiles.
Now that the automobile bug had bit him, there was no looking back. Taoru showed his personal collection and also got a little nostalgic when he showed us his first car.
This is a 1932 Chevy Phaeton. This was my first car. As I mentioned earlier, this was the car which was in completely disarray. Nothing was together. Everything was bikhrawa. The beauty of this car is that this car had come into, there is an emblem inside the car which talks about a dealer from Lahore. So that means that this car had come into undivided India. This car primarily is for chauffeurs to drive because the front leg space is far lesser than the rear leg space.
This car is just one of the beauties of the entire collection. What caught my fancy was Taoru's collection of Indian cars, with the Ambassador getting a separate H&M power station replica.
So we have the entire history of Ambassadors. We have a Fiat, Prima Padmini, we have the Standard Herald, we have the Standard 10 which started the whole thing, then we have a Badal. So because we want people to connect with these cars. The only way they can connect with these cars is by seeing what, when they were young they saw it, or elders that in their lifetime these were the cars that were running in the country.
They say each car has a story, and indeed it was true as I spent more and more time listening to the tales by Taoru. If you thought he had acquired all cars, then you have to hear this one.
It was a 1932 Ford which I saw in Lakshmangarh. Lakshmangarh is in Rajasthan, and I'd gone there and he was asking for 15,000 rupees for that car at that time, about 15 years back. I unfortunately didn't have that kind of money. I'm a salaried person, so I had about roughly, my budget was about 10,000 for that car. So he said no. I tried to offer him 500 rupees more, but he didn't agree. So anyway, I came back disheartened that I couldn't get that car. Somehow later I thought, okay, maybe let me offer him 2,000 more and try and get the car. So I called him after 3-4 months, and you won't believe this. There was a massive storm in that area, and the car was parked next to a huge wall. That whole wall had fallen down, and that car had completely got destroyed. So poor guy, I pity him also, I pity myself, and I pity that car. We lost a car.
Having given you a glimpse of the four-wheelers, it was time to shift gears quite literally. The two-wheelers were itching to get some spotlight on them. The minute you walk into the floor where the two-wheelers are showcased, you're literally running on memory lane. This is one place where everyone will be like, hey, I had one of those, and that's exactly what Taoru echoed.
Because the moment people come, that first thing is, ये तो Lambretta है, ये तो हमारे पास होता था, ये Vespa है, यहाँ से हमने सीखना, पहली है हमारी कार. That whole element of that nostalgia, that emotion. When they see their Lambrettas, I've seen so many elder people. I don't know why we had to sell our Lambretta. Why couldn't we have kept it?
Hey, you come back. I know by now you've already been transported into this beautiful world of vintage cars. And I think I can already see you drooling or imagining yourself in one of these beauties. I don't blame you, but you have to join us next week as we get you the second part of this story. Yes, you heard that right. Do join us next week as we get you many more unseen facets of the vintage era.